Welcome all to the Classic Car Life then everyone, and you join me once again in the garage with the Sebring Sprite behind me. Now, as I promised a few videos back, this car is going to kick off a whole new mini-series on my channel where I aim to document everything I get up to with this car since buying it. So in today's video, firstly I want to tell you a little bit of history about the Sebring Sprites and why I like them so much and why I think they're such cool cars, and then you guys can understand where they came from and how they were designed. Then I want to tell you what I've got up to with this car in the first sort of couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks of owning it, any problems I've encountered. Obviously bought this car at an auction and we hadn't seen it before, so there was a couple of little things that we had to change. And then finally, the best thing is we're going to take it for a drive and you guys can understand what this car is like on the road and how loud it is and how much fun it is. Obviously it's no C or E type, it's nowhere near as powerful nor as loud, but it is great fun in many different ways when you get it onto windy roads, unlike the boring motorway cruising we did all the way home for sort of 2.5 hour journey. But before I get onto that, I want to quickly give you guys an update on the C-Type. Obviously it's been away for a couple of weeks, it'll be coming back soon, so I want to tell you where that's at, so you guys can understand where the C-Type's at, so we can get onto that. So guys, regarding the C-Type, as you know, we had it at Castle Combe on the track a few months back, and we were setting some flying laps, having a great time in the car alongside other D and C-Types. But then we blew a tappet housing. We fished a little bit to the tappet housing out of the engine ourselves, but we didn't know how far the tappet housing had got into the engine. After sending it off to a specialist down at CKL, we found out it made it all the way down to the sump, which meant the engine had to come out. So at this current stage, the engine is out of the car. So the engine had to come out, and then they had to machine certain bits of the engine so it can run smoothly again. So that's going to be sorted soon. In addition to that, the car, we found out at Castle Combe didn't have sufficient breathing. So it was popping the dipstick out as pressure was building up. So we are having 2 new breather pipes put on the car, one on the top of each cam cover, as well as the one we already have at the front of the engine to give more breathing to the car so it can run better, smoother, and hopefully get more power out of it without popping the dipstick out and squirting oil all over the car. We're also getting an oil cooler fitted in addition to provide better cooling and obviously better track use, and possibly a few other little bits and bobs that we may get done just to help the car and improve it, and I'll let you guys know when and how they happen. So until then, that's all that's going on with the C-Type. As I said, at this current stage, the car doesn't have an engine in it, so obviously the bonnet's off, the engine's out, disconnected from the gearbox, it's all out. So once that goes back together, obviously I'll keep you guys updated. But now let's move on to the Sebring Sprite and I'll tell you what it's been like the first couple of weeks of ownership and how awesome this little car is. So guys, as I said, moving on to what has it been like owning this car for the first couple of weeks. And to summarise it in a couple of words, it has just been great fun because it's so small, it's got a full roll cage, you get in, you squeeze yourself in, you become part of the car, you strap yourself into the harness, you're in this really forward driving position looking all the way down the bonnet, which is about half the size of the Jags, half the size of what we're used to, and it is just great fun. Now the car is not as powerful as the Jags, obviously it's only got a little 1275 engine. I'm pretty sure it's under 100 horsepower, but it's so nippy and it hasn't got much power on paper. It does feel like it's got enough pulling power to provide great fun, especially through some windy roads, as you'll see later. So guys, continuing what it's been like owning this car then, and it's been eventful from the start, to be honest. From buying this car, when we drove a couple of hundred metres down the road after collecting it, it conked out on us. It turns out that in the auction houses, they're only allowed a certain amount of fuel in the tank, which is a very small amount. So we ran out of fuel a couple of hundred metres down the road and had to walk around trying to find a fuel station to fill up a jerry can to then fill up the car. Then we got on the road, we could smell quite a strong smell of fuel. We stopped at a fuel station, we filled the car up and we saw fuel leaking out the bottom of the car up to a certain level, which indicated there was either a hole or something wrong with the tank. We did manage to get home. Once we were home, obviously the smell of fuel was still very, very intense. So we took the whole tank off. So in the first couple of weeks of owning this car, we have had the fuel tank completely off of it. And we realised that the fuel was working its way up the threads of the bolts. It was soaking the rear mat of the car as well as dripping out the bottom of the car. So we sealed up them threads with a bit of special sealant. So that's completely sorted now, there's no more smell of fuel. But apart from that, the car has been running fine. Obviously, like I said, we bought this car blind at an auction. It has had a full restoration. When we bought it, it had 0 miles since restoration. So I guess a couple of little niggles are okay, but that's the only problem we've come across so far. So guys, that was the only little drama that's occurred with the car. Apart from that, nothing else has happened and I'm really enjoying it. It's a great little car. The engine's got great pulling power, as I said. Makes a great exhaust note, as you'll find out later when we take the car out for a drive. Apart from that, the car's fine, really enjoying it as I said. I've obviously got a couple of little changes planned as I did mention at the end of my last video with the Sprite. I am going to put roundels and numbers on the car at some point. I'm just working out whether to either get them painted on, which costs a little bit more, or put the stickers on, or the decals I should say, which are very hard to put on, I'll say, without getting bubbles in them. I have tried. I've got a couple of other little things I may change, but for now I'm going to keep that quiet and until I've decided whether I will or will not go for it, because that is quite a drastic change what I've got planned. But apart from that, I think it's important that you guys understand the history of the car and you understand why I like this car so much. To begin the history then, guys, I think the best way to explain it to you is to start right back at the beginning with the original car. So at the start you had the Austin Healey Sprite, which was a standard car. It could be bought by anyone, it could be bought by a family next door. It was a standard production car with no race orientated upgrades. Still a great little car that was enjoyed by many. But then Donald Healey, he took that car with his works team and they turned it into sort of a more race orientated car. They gave it sort of better brakes, they gave it a better tuned engine to get more power out of it, they strengthened the chassis to make the whole car better and more race orientated. That car was then taken around the world, raced on many tracks around the world. It did quite well. It wasn't an amazing race car, but it was a good little car. But then what Speedwell did, Speedwell was founded in 1957, is they took that car and they changed the body, they gave it more power, they took what Donald Healey had done and on his works car and they basically made it 1,000 times better. The car was hugely successful all around the world, and the FIA actually classed that car as a completely separate model because Speedwell changed it so much. They didn't even recognise it as the original Sprite. It was one thing sort of back in the day, taking a production car and turning it into a race car, that was very common, but to change it to the extent where the FIA, the biggest governing body in racing, didn't even recognise it as the original model is something extreme. So what they did with the Speedwell is they gave it a completely different bonnet, which was more aerodynamic. They gave it a different roof line, which was also seen as more aerodynamic. It ran discs on the front like this one and drums on the rear. So the braking was good, sort of top at the time for a car like this, a very small car. It stopped and it went very well with the tuned up engine. So that's sort of the main history of this car and sort of where it came from. The car was then obviously raced around the world. It did very well, very successful little car. It wasn't just raced on track, but it was rallied as well. So that's sort of the main history of these cars and where they originated from. Obviously it's quite a sort of extensive timeline because it wasn't just a production car to a race car. Instead, it was from a production car to then the Sebring Sprite, which was then sort of built on and made even better, and then into the Speedwell Sprite, which was more aerodynamic and obviously faster and had more chassis upgrades and more different sort of changes to it. So I think what's more important now is that we take this car out for a drive and you guys can understand what it's like driving this little thing, how it drives, the noise it makes, sort of the power it's got. Obviously it's not lightning quick, as I said, it is not a lightweight E-Type like up on the top or the C-Type. It hasn't got 300 plus horsepower, but it is great fun and it makes a great noise and it's really nippy on the tight little bends. So let's take it out for a drive and let's see what it's like. the garage, and I hope you enjoyed that quick drive in the Sebring Sprite, because that is just a taster of what is to come in this car. I'm going to be putting loads more miles on it, going to be enjoying it, taking to it as many events as possible. Only had it a few weeks and I've already taken it out a bit, so hope to take it out even more. Hopefully some of you guys will see the car around. As some of you may have seen as well, the car did have numbers on it when I was shooting the drive-by shots. That is because shortly after filming the scenes in the garage, I did put numbers on it whilst I'm deciding whether to put the stick-on roundels or get them painted on for a little bit more money. I thought I'd just put the numbers on their own. They're darks, they're quite discreet at the moment, so do tell me if you like them. Head over to my Instagram account, The Classic Car Life, and you can check out a better picture of the roundels, and do tell me if you like them in the comments below. But until then, thanks for watching, please subscribe for more, and I'll see you all soon.